Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 7th of November, we're just going to have a good time at the Vise, tying a couple of old favorites for the water, favorites for the Vise. Gretchen will be doing a lime crude. I'll be doing a humping. We'll be talking in the tip more about a story rather than so much a tip, but you'll get to learn about our dubbing and our wax. Let's go. We're the Beaties from Boise, Idaho, and you about ready to dive in and do your fly?
Okay, with for the lime trude, it's just pretty straightforward. We've got lime thread, although I'm using stretchy nylon for my body and for my initial thread, and then I will change to the black, and I forgot to get my black thread.
There it is.
And then after I get the body on, then I will change to the black thread. And then it says moose, but I'm going to go ahead and use I think that's a mustache brush or cosmetic brush of some sort.
Yeah.
I really like the tail it makes, so I'm going to use that. And of course, the body's going to be the stretchy floss. And I'm going to have copper wire on the first part of the body. We don't have that on there, but that's okay. And calf tail wing. And I am going to do the calf tail, not the poly, brown hackle and thread for the head, black thread. So look over here. You can kind of see all the stuff. This is the brush I was talking about that I'm going to use. And I think I've got everything else here. I'm going to tie it in a size 12.
Okay, that's what it looks like. And let me get a hook in the vise for you, sweetheart.
I'm tying this. There are some good tips as we go along. But I also it's such a serviceable fly. I love fishing it on the lock saw for cutthroat. It's either that or a stimulator. They're in this color, and it's just a lot of fun to fish. So, and I tied a lot of them when we were commercially tied. So I'm going to start my base wrap here about at the 1/3 point. And if you'll notice how nice and smooth that stretchy nylon goes on. Paul Fidelis was talking the other night on another presentation about how he found a similar product. And it reminded me that Al and I originally, when we started tying this, we found this product at a Bernina sewing store.
Yeah, with 1,000-yard rolls.
1,000-yard rolls, and that's how we started out with it.
And then we took it to Danville and requested that they add it to their product line, and after some negotiation, that's how it ended up there.
And the thing that we like about doing it costs a little more, but now we have the Danville colors, which is really handy. So first thing I'm going to put on here is I've got some real fine copper wire that I'm going to put on here. And I want it underneath. So I'm going to just hold it right here and let the torque pull it underneath. Well, actually, I should do that different if I want the torque to do it. There we go. Sometimes I like it to be in the front, but since I said that, we better put it in the back. Doesn't really matter one way or the other to me, but I'm going to go over to the materials. And this is my brush. As you can see, what I love about this, look at those tips. You don't even have to.
Already cleaned and stacked, isn't it?
Pretty clean and stacked. And so you can take a look and pretty well tell what your tail is going to look like. And the twist over point looks about like the outside diameter of the eye of the hook. And that's what I want for my tail. And I want it to be the length of the shank. I do have a couple wild ones here that I'm going to pull out. And hold it up and measure it. Put it in place. Notice that I hold it towards me, not right on the hook. And I let the torque set it right up on top. And as I am doing this, I'm finishing the body. So I'm taking my time, making it nice and smooth. It's about right. Better go back. Make sure I've got it pretty well covered. Get a little twist in it. There we go. Now I want to hold this up and take a real steep cut on it. Love these scissors, by the way. And this helps me just to kind of blend that rather than a steep cut. Well, you guys think you want that? I don't think I want you there. I'm going to cut it off. Here we go. Just even wraps. And I'm going to go way beyond where the body's going to be just because it's easier. And I'll come here and just take a couple wraps around the wire. And the reason I do that is when I just try to tie over the top of it, it loosens it. And the reason I go quite a ways away, as you can see, I've got some wraps here that I don't want to show, and those will be underneath my poly. Oh, I should use different scissors for this. Oh well, get it way up in there. I know a lot of people helicopter their wire, and the only reason I don't do that is because I'm not very good at it. I guess I should practice that some. I'm going to take just a single piece of this, and I want to get up here where it's a little fluffier. Now I'm going to hold this so that it's facing, the shiny side is facing forward, so it will cup this way. And that's just because I like the way that looks. There's no real reason for that other than my own preference. Now at this point, I'm going to get my black thread. And the way I change thread is I take a wrap and then I wrap over the top what I'm going to cut off. I take a wrap around the two of them. Now I can cut those two. And always pull out the thread so you don't have to rethread it. And then I think we've shown you all this before. We have these O-rings on here.
Now, that was a tip from Leroy Hyatt from Lewiston, Idaho. And we loved it so much we do it on all of our bobbins now.
And that way it doesn't come out. So I'm going to do a little bit of base wrapping here with the black. Okay, and I want it to come just about to here. Now, see, if I just go like this, it's going to be facing the wrong way. So how do I get it to face the way I want? Watch this motion. I'm going to move towards the back and bring it around. Oop, that didn't work. So come forward. It's being really stubborn. There, whoop. There we go. I think I've got it now. So if you just twist it around, you can finally get it facing the direction you want. If you're lucky, when you tie it on, it's going to be there, but sometimes that just doesn't work. Take a couple wraps around it. There we go. Did kind of a sloppy job there. Let's see if I can recover from that. Okay, now I want to tie on my calf tail. Let's talk a little bit about calf tail. Normally, the best part of the calf tail is probably from, about here to about here. So as you can see, I still have some good stuff left. But if I tried to get up here, you can see that I start getting into some trouble. And I could try as I might, calf tail just doesn't straighten. So when you're using your calf tail, be sure that you are down far enough and up far enough on it to have some good material. So as you take a look at that, that looks like I'm going to have enough, maybe just a tad bit more. And I like to cut it off right at the base as close as I can. Half tail, any kind of hair, has short fibers in there. I think you can see some of those shorter fibers. We don't want to try to tie with those. When I first started trying to tie, I took a class on hair length, and I was leaving all of that stuff and trying to tie it on and make a wing out of it, and it was just a disaster till I learned to get rid of all of that. So I've got it down here at the in my little waste bin, getting rid of that. So as you can see now, that's all gone. This is kind of long for my stacker, and I don't need it that length, so I'm going to cut a little bit of that off, just because it'll go into the stacker better. Now the secret, and you all probably know this, is that this is all the same length. This isn't. This is harder to get into the stacker. This is easier. So I pick this up, just put it in like this, and here we go. Take the material out facing in the direction that you want it on the vise, or I mean on the hook. That looks pretty good. I want the wing to come out about halfway down the tail, so about there. I'm going to hold it towards me and slightly away from the hook. I could take a wrap around, but this works pretty good for me. Whatever works the best for you. Cut it off at a pretty good angle. Now, if you want it laying close along the body, you're done. But I want it to be at a different angle. So I'm going to just take my thread, wrap around this way, pull on it, and raise that angle just a bit. That way the body shows a little better. Okay, I am ready for hackle. I selected a hackle earlier today. So I've got this nice long saddle hackle. That's what I'm going to use. There's lots of things you can do, but I generally just clear off a section of it. Now, if you notice here, it's kind of twisted, and I don't want to fuss with that, so I'm going to get rid of that part, the twisted skin, twisted hair. Feather. Okay, now I'm just going to pull these off. And notice that I have a little bit more bare stem here than I do here. So I'm going to put it, and even at that, I'm not going to tie on right there. I'll probably tie on just a little bit forward of where that hackle starts. I've got it a little bit long. I don't want it in the eye, so I'm going to trim that excess off. That white. There we go. Now, I don't have a real steep hill here, but sometimes you end up with a pretty steep hill, so I'm going to pretend like it's pretty steep. And the way to keep my hackle tight and not sliding apart is to have my thread hanging right there. So I'm wrapping against the thread. Tension of the thread should keep my hackle close together. The other thing too is pressure should be that way a little bit. That helps keep it tight. And I like to have mine fairly tight against not loose wraps, tight wraps. Reminds me when we were tying commercially, every once in a while I'd say, Al, look at this hackle. It's perfect. Every once in a while you get it and it just looks so good you can't help it but really admire it. I only took 2 wraps over that. Now I'm going to dogleg it back against the wrapped hackle. Got a little one sticking out there. Oh, there he goes. Now I can just pull this guy forward. And I'm going to whip finish. Whoop. Don't like that. Here we go. Coming forward with my wraps for proper whip finish. And that's my lime truth.
Questions for Gretchen? He's getting ready. John Wright is getting ready to do something. We've got some questions here. Let me get into the chat. And there's several people. Tell us about the new scissors.
Oh,
And
you go ahead.
There's this package showed up in the mail from David Buckner as I guess you could say it was a thank you for some of the stuff that we've done. We'll just leave it at that. Well, our thanks to David because those scissors are pretty wonderful. And where to get them? I don't know where to get them. They came from Italy. And David, can you kind of chime in for a second here and let me add you here. Maybe you can chat about that for just a second there. Add spotlight. There you are, David.
Sure, they're new copter scissors. Got them from 54 Dean Street. And Al and Gretchen have the ones that have the finger loop, and they also make one without the finger loop. But I knew they liked the finger loop.
Yeah, I like the finger loop because it just
But
stays.
they're serrated edge, extremely sharp, stainless steel. They're awesome scissors. Great for deer hair.
Also, this little pad here for your thumb, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
They're very well designed. They're excellent. The thing that I noticed, they are a little heavier than the whisk clips. So
Right.
it took me a little while to get used to them, but I love them. Thank you, Dave. Ooh.
You're welcome.
Okay, David, we thank you. We thank you again for those scissors. And any other questions for Gretchen? Unmute yourself and ask. Well, I'll move my materials into place and get ready to do the next fly on that.
Guy that owns company, Copter Tools, made in Italy, is a guy named Piero Sestino. He was invited out to the Atlantic Salmon Guild and brought a bunch of tools, and so he's the owner of that company in Italy. Copter Tools.
It's the humpy. It's gonna be the red humpy. I agree. I'm going to be using a size 10 hook tonight. Red thread, moose tail. The wing will be elk, but it could be deer or calf. It's your choice. The body is going to be red floss, and you'll see it's going to be some of that nylon stretch that Gretchen used a few minutes ago. The hump will also be made out of elk. The hackle, I'm going to use badger, but you could use brown, grizzly, a mix, whatever you want. It's your choice. And then the head's going to be thread.
I have to make a comment at this point. I said I was tying a size 12. I wasn't. I was tying a size 10. So I apologize for that. The other thing too is I don't tie humpies much. And when you watch Al, you'll know why I don't bother.
Anyway, that's the roadmap fly. And I was working on some other stuff so much today that I did not get a chance to tie a roadmap fly. This is from a presentation that I did about a year ago. And so I pulled it out so you can see what direction we're going. So I haven't tied a humpy in a long time, so this could be a train wreck. You just never know. But anyway, let's get over here to the materials and we'll kind of look them over. And, oh, here's the scissors. And I'll set those aside and start with my super close-up glasses. Put them on. And as you can see here, I've got moose, elk, and then some other elk. This is elk from along close to the backbone. This is more down on the rib. It's softer and longer. This is spikier, stiffer. That's for the wings, and that's for the hump. But I am going to start out by getting some of this nylon stretch and bringing it over to the vise. And I want you to notice that the nylon stretch is it's multi-stranded stuff, but when you pull it tight, it lays nice and smooth. Now I'm going to start at about the 1/3 point and wrap to the end of the shank. And then I'm going to come back. Now, just before I get to the end of the shank, I'm going to stop and trim my waist. That's so that I don't have a little tag sticking out the back end there. And now I'll wrap, and I'm going to wrap about halfway back and stop. All right, now let's move over here and we'll get some of the material out of the moose body here. I'll pull the tips off these scissors. And I want to get down here and I want you to notice how I reach down into the bundle to get it. I use the tips to get it out. I often see people do this routine. They turn it around, they kind of pull the hair back and try to pull it out, and they just make a god-awful mess. Get your scissors in there, find the amount of hair that you want, pull it up, now grab it, and then push your scissors down tight against the skin and cut. And that just, boy, those scissors cut. Wow. Anyway, and that just cuts it away from the hide, keeps it close, and it keeps what I call a plowed field, which is that area where all the cut pieces are gone and off. It keeps it smooth instead of becoming a big stubble field. Now, what I have here is on this end is a whole bunch of fuzz and short stuff. And I need to get rid of that fuzz and short stuff because the only thing I want is this long stuff right out here on the end. And now I can get rid of that by running my finger up and down through the waist ends, and you can see it starting to come out. Now I'm going to get that all over my camera, and I don't want that, so I'm going to just reach down to the waist bin and quickly knock all that stuff loose. And by rapidly running my finger up and down like that, was what I just did. I knocked all that out, and all I have left now is the long ones with none of the trash left behind. And just like Gretchen did, lining up these uneven tips, my job here with the stacker is to take these uneven tips and make them even. And so, but those uneven tips don't go into the stacker worth a darn. And I see people all the time trying to get them lined up into the stacker. Well, it's already nice and flat right there on the butt end, so just stick it in backwards and push it in there and go ahead and stack. Now I'm going to tip this over so that the tips will be pointing in the direction that they're going to go to work, towards the back. And let me see here. I want to make sure that I don't have too many fibers, and I do. I've got a few too many, so I'm just going to get some of those out of there. Because what I want, there's a short one, is a bundle of hair that when I give it a twist, like that, it's about the same diameter as the outside of the hook eye. Now that's the formula that Gretchen and I use for the hair tails on our hair flies, like humpies and wolves and all that kind of stuff. And you may have a better one, or I even know one fellow that counts the hair, and I'll guarantee you he's accurate. Okay, I'm going to measure this for length equal to the length of the hook shank, set it towards the back, and just like Gretchen, did you see how I'm kind of above the hook? Well, I'm going to bring this down on my side of the hook and use thread torque to bring that material back up on top. And that helps me avoid the possibility of, well, okay, let me show you what could happen. We've got time tonight. I'm going to back up here. Let's say I've often seen people do this and they set it down there and they get ready to wrap it into place. And I want you to see what's happening to that hair. It's already going to the other side, and they wonder why their tails and wings end up on the side of the hook or maybe even underneath the hook. Well,
Thread torque.
thread torque is defeating them. Now I just showed you the one way to defeat thread torque, and that was by putting it down and around like this. There's another way, and I'm going to do some fiddling around here to get it in my hands just right, because I'm going to use a thread loop around the bundle. See how that's just around the bundle there, and it's not around the hook. Now I'll go down around the hook. Now that hair cannot do anything but stay up on top, because it's lashed with a kind of almost a figure eight there on top of the hook. All right. Now let's see, that looks pretty decent. So far I'm okay. And like I said, I haven't had one of these in, well, I don't know, at least 6 months. Okay, now I'm going to work forward, and the humpy particularly is really bad for a thing that we call material creep. Material creep is where you think you've got everything in the right spot, and the bulk of the material causes it to end up just slightly forward on the hook. Now I see my camera has decided to be a camera that follows us. So let me get over here and get this thing straightened out so it doesn't follow me all over the place. Okay, there we are. Now it'll stay put. All right. Not that that makes it.
Another camera.
Do we? Oh, please. You said we had a couple extra dollars. Great. Anyway.
Play with your new toy, right, Al?
It's a new toy right now. You know, let me tell you what, the camera that I should have got costed $1,000 instead of 500. This one costs 500, and it will follow one person. The other more expensive one will follow two. I didn't know that when I bought this, and it follows me all over the place, but it won't include Gretchen. Or it'll just say the heck with me and follow her.
Just fine, let it follow you. Another $1,000.
Okay.
I'm gonna say this is not a very smart camera. If it was me, I'd be following Gretchen.
I'm not going to say anything in that regard. I've been doing that for like 30 some years. Anyway, where was I? John Wright just got me all messed up. Anyway,
You're talking about
putting on the materials. Let's get back over here.
Yeah.
Material creep.
Material creep. Now let me back up. I want you to see that if I bring my thread all the way forward so that I am at the 1/3 place where I want my wings to be, just like I'm pointing right now, what's going to happen is my wings, because of the bulk of the material, if I tie it on there, is going to be forward to here.
Yeah, but you bend it over.
And all of a sudden, the area I left for my hackle is going to go away. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to compensate for that material keep right now by backing up 2 turns. I want the front of my wings to be right there at the front of those turns of thread. So I'll back up to compensate for that bulk. Now let me get over here and we'll get some of that hair.
See if we can keep from digressing again.
Yeah, but I'll try to stay on target. One of the things that we need to talk about is a animal hide. Now I'm pointing at a deer right here, and let's see, I've got an elk also, pretty much the same. I'll just set that deer aside. The really good wing and tail material is in a strip about 6 inches on either side of the backbone, all the way from the butt end up to the shoulders. About a foot wide strip there. And that's where this hair came from. Now, some elk are marked with darker colors than others. So this one feels pretty stiff. It feels stiff. This one feels very soft, almost like cotton balls that you have in your medicine cabinet. This one is pretty stiff, and this one comes from up here along the backbone. And when you get down into the rib area, it's softer, usually longer, and more easily manipulated. But just set that aside, just so you know. And the same thing with deer hair, except it's colored a little different. But right along the backbone, about a foot long wide, through that area from shoulders to from the rump to the shoulders is wings and tails. The rest of it's for spinning and other things other than the wings and tails. So let me just put that out of the way. And I'm going to get some hair out here for my wings. And I'm going to want 2 wings, about each one the size of the tail. So I need about twice as much. And I'm just going to set that down and move back over here to the vise. And just like I did with my moose, I have a lot of fuzz and short junk here that I need to get rid of. And I'm just going to do the same thing, rapidly run my finger up and down through that waist end, but I'm going to do it down here over the bin so that I don't get that fuzz and short hair and all that stuff all over my camera lens. And one of the things that I should have done and I didn't do, and I'm really starting to have trouble, is static electricity. Oh dear. Well, I am going to throw that away because it's sticking to me so bad. And I'm going to reach over here and get my spray. And this is a anti-static, or it's called Static Guard. And that's the small version, the travel version. But the one that I work with on a regular basis, I've also got a clothes dryer pad, this rubber banded to it, and that helps take a lot of the static out of your hands. But anyway, I'm just going to give that a blast over there, all that hair, and then I'm going to put some of that static guard on my hands so I can that stuff will stop sticking to me, and I can actually get something done here. Now I'll go back to the materials area and cut myself another bundle of hair that's been treated with the anti-static. And back here at the vise, as you can see again, now I'm going to really get a hold of this right out of the very tips of that longest hair. And again, run my fingers rapidly up and down through the waist end. Oh yeah, that's acting a lot better. Right. Looking pretty good. I want to make sure that I've got rid of all the really long ones there. I want the really long ones and get rid of anything short. And why is that? Well, they look the same, but because they're not as mature as the longer hairs, they have different properties. And those different properties is that they flare a lot more. Okay, I'm just going to put these into the stacker now. And remember, I put in the cut ends. It's a lot easier than lining up the uneven ends. Now my wings are going to be pointed forward, so I'm not going to point my stacker to the back like I did before. Instead, I'm going to flip it over the other way because that's the direction I'm going to put those hairs into use. And let me just set all that down. And I've got a little bit too much hair here because figuring out what is twice a bundle that's twice the size of the tail is a bit of guesstimation at best. So I'm just going to get this where I think it's about that. There we go. That looks about right to me, and a lot of that's an educated guess based on a lot of years of experience. And I'm gonna get my tweezers out here. I've got one hair that's a little bit too short. All right, I'll put that down. That's looking pretty darn good. And I want those wings to be equal to the length of the hook shank. And I'll tell you what, I screw these up almost every single time I do them. If I don't do what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take my wraps around that bundle of hair, and I'm going to get a spare hook to use as a gauge to make sure that that's there. They slipped on me just a little bit. They're a little bit too long. Let me shorten them up just a touch. There we go. Now, see how that flares out? And now, I need to cut off the waist. But wait a minute, I'm making a humpy. One of the really difficult things about a humpy is if you try to build all of the hump out of hair for the hump, you're going to be fighting yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use waist to make some of the hump, and then I'll use the hair for the actual hump for the rest of it. So I'm just going to wrap back towards the back of the hook, making kind of a mess, if you will. And I'll just reach up in here now, and I want to cut that off, and that is a mess. But that's all right. Here we go. And now I want to get into, I really want that hair for the hump to be right about there, where that's hanging. Now remember material creep? If I want it to be there, I got to back up at least 2 turns. Now I'm going to go to the other hair. This is the belly hair or the rib hair. What it really is, it's a lot longer and much softer, and it will really bind into place there. And I remember I'm only going to need not quite as much hair as I had planned on for the hump, because I've already built some of the hump out of the waist from the wings. See, there's pretty good hump there already. I mean, that isn't what I would call a good looking fly at this stage of the game. But now I need to get rid of some of the waste just like before, and see how this looks. And I want to get rid of as many of these short ones as possible, because those shorties will just get in the way as I try to pull the hair over and make the hump. It's just going to be kind of a pain. No, that's starting to look about right. In other words, a lot less hair than you would think I would need, but remember I've already formed some of that hump. That's still too much. There we go. That's better. Now I'm just going to cut that off even. Set that in place. Now, if I pull straight down, it'll start to cinch up, and then that's going to jump right off the ends of those ends. But if I take and I'm going to pull, did you go to the wide shot camera, Gretchen? I'm going to pull back towards the back. Now you can come back. And that will suck right in there and not come loose. And I had a couple that weren't quite there, close enough to the end, and they came loose. So you can see what would have happened. Now, I'm just going to bind these to the body, start putting my body together. Now, again, if I come up to here and pull that hump over, I'm going to have the waist from the hump pushing those wings forward, and I'm just going to have a mess. So if that's where I think I would want that hump to go, I'm going to back up several turns. I want that hump to come right about there. Now here's where people get into trouble. Let's talk about a rule of hair. If you're going to fold hair over, from back to front like you do on a humpy, or you're going to fold it over from front to back like you do on a half of a bullet head or a full bullet head. Here's the rule. You can pull the hair over to position it. You cannot pull it tight. If you want a nice tight bullet head or a nice tight hump on your humpy, you get it in a position by pulling it into place, and then you push it to tighten it. So let's take a look here.
So that smooths it.
That smooths it out. And so what we're doing here now is, okay, I've got that pulled over and that looks good. I cannot tell you the number of times and the number of flies I've seen when I'm judging flies for the FFI awards program, that's when it gets tied off. They'll just tie it off just like that. It looks pretty good, but it's not tight. And I am going to back up here now and do that again. Now I've got that pulled over and I pulled it up to this point. Now I'm going to push. And when I push here at the back, I'm going to relax my right hand, the one I'm playing with right there. When I'm holding it, then I push. Well, that's holding it so I can let go. And what I'm doing is allowing the two hands to work in unison, pushing at the back, dressing forward, pushing at the back, dressing forward. There we go. Take a turn around there. Now here's something that's really important because often I see humpies tied. They're beautiful up until they get to this point, and then the hump ends up partly covering the belly. Well, here's how you keep that from happening. Relax the thread and pull up. Now, keep tension on that hair as you pull down. And I do not need to even look. I know that that belly is perfect. All right. Now at this stage, I'm going to have to cut this off, and this is where a lot of people get into trouble. If you think they didn't get into trouble before, they sure do up at this point because they think, well, Jesus, I don't want a bunch of waist ends showing here. I guess I'll cut that off just as close as I can. And then they start popping out, coming loose, and maybe you can salvage the fly with crazy glue, maybe not, but the way to do it the proper way is to cut it long. And I'm sorry, this is one time I cannot help but block the camera because I can't get the cut I need without that. Now, I want you to notice how long that hair is there. I didn't cut it short. I don't want it pulling out. Now what I'm going to do is switch, bring this forward, and I am going to switch to and get my other thread and pull it out from underneath the O-ring and replace the floss with a thread. And I'm just going to pull right back to the same place that I came from, and I'm just substituting thread for floss. You'll notice that the thread is now hanging exactly in the same spot where the floss was. And Gretchen's giving you a really good tight shot, and that's beautiful. Now, what I'm going to do at this point now is I'm going to start working forward, scrunching down these waist ends. And in fact, I want you to notice that I kind of reach back and then pull forward. What I'm doing is pulling those waist ends up tight to the wing. Okay, and now I want to push the wing up. Wrap a thread dam in front. And it's time to do our crisscross wraps. And I got a couple over here that didn't want to get with the program. I missed them. And I'll just trim those off. And now let me set my wing here. Okay, now you can see it's all nicely fanned out. And I'm just going to, I got to tip this up so I can see it. Now I know you can't quite see it, but I'll get them divided and then I'll show you. Okay, there they are. They're nicely divided. And I'm just going to wrap in between with a couple of crisscross wraps. So that we end up looking like that. Now I'm just going to go ahead and wrap around each wing post to kind of gather, not really tight wraps, but I call them gathering wraps. All they're doing is pulling that wing together, that wing on the far side. And now we'll do the wing on the near side. All right, let's see what they look like here. Yeah, good shot, Gretchen. All right. So now I'll reach over here to the materials area and get my hackle. And I've got a couple of these, and all right, I'll get over here. Now, just like Gretchen did, I've already bared the stem here. But what I want to do now is take a little bit more off of the top side than off of the bottom. So you can see that I've got a bare area up here on top, and that's going to help the hackle barbs lay in place and not start spreading out all over where I don't want them. All right, now I'll just go ahead and build my hackle platform. And it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Now let's start getting our hackle ready to wrap. First turn. And if your first turn has hackle fibers pointing back like that, you need to stop right there and strip a little bit more off. Just see how nice those lay in there right now? And had I not stripped more on one side than the other, I would have had something sticking back. Now, as I work my way forward, I don't care if they stick back a little bit because there's a row of hackle behind them that keeps them from sticking where I don't want them. See, that makes a pretty nice application. Now let me pull my wings up straight here and make a turn. I made a mistake here at the back. I got to take one of these turns off because I got to make one turn in front of the wing. And I want you to notice that I'm going back towards the back because I'm going to go back and put another turn behind the wing. And what that does is it takes away that little empty space that you often see on the off side of the wing. And there's just a little slot not filled up with hackle. And we've often had people ask us, how do we get such nice, neat heads on our dry flies that are a pretty heavily built fly? And the way you do it is with the tie wrap system. Notice that I'm going around that thread twice. Wrapped it into place. And my feather is tied off, and I'm ready to build a head.
We actually did that two different ways.
Yep.
So there's two ways to do it, with the tie wrap or with the...
And in fact, if you want to know more about the tie wrap system, you can go on to the Fly Fishers International website, and we've got, I don't know, I think it's 6 or 7 ways to do the tie wrap system differently. But you see, I've got a nice small head there with a fairly robust hackle. We'll just go ahead now and put in a half hitch, put in another half hitch, and now I'm going to use the same tool for a whip finish. If I pull that off under tension like I'm doing right there, that will be a 2-turn jam knot. If on the other hand, though, I relax it, see how that's relaxed? I slide it in place, and when those turns go over the top, they're no longer a jam knot, they're a whip finish. That only took a while to learn how to do that. I'll cut that off. I'll cut this off. Put that there. And there you've got a red humpy. Any questions? Okay, let's see. How many people
Beautiful
do?
dog.
Okay, Al, I'm
Thank
going to
you.
ask a really dumb question. Could you show me how you're holding your scissors? And you hold them like that all the time, right?
Yeah, in fact, I'll tell you what, we're so used to it that I think I've told this story before, but anyway, when we were tying commercially, you'd have them sometimes in your hands for 10 hours at a time, and I'd be getting ahead or on the fly order or Gretchen would, whichever one of us, we'd all of a sudden be up at the stove starting to pick up a butcher knife to cut some steaks or something. You still got your scissors in your hand. You get so used to having them there, you just don't know how to do it. Now, the other night on Michael Paradis's program, Michael Schweit showed how to do a half hitch with the scissors. Well, I felt pretty comfortable tying a fly that I haven't tied in a long time. I've never done this before. I'm going to practice it a time or two before I try to show you how it works. But anyhow, any other questions?
Somebody wanted to talk about how to fish the lime trout, and I thought maybe you'd want to tell them how you fish both of those flies, since you're the guide.
I'll tell you the truth. That guy right there was one of the flies that I started the day with. Usually, if the customers didn't care, I'd put that fly on the fly rod for the customer in the back as a tip fly, and then I would put that'd be a number 10 humpy, and that would be the indicator fly. Then I would do a dropper off of that with some type of something or another. That'd be 14 to 18. It'd be a nymph, usually a bead head, maybe one of our prints or whatever. It's
You did a lot of guide princes,
yeah, a lot of guides princes.
and that caught a lot of
But-
whitefish.
It would catch a lot of whitefish, and anyway, that fly I'd use it a lot as an indicator fly, and we caught one heck of a lot of fish on it too. But it made a good indicator fly because it floated so high. Okay, the lime trout. The lime trout, number one, lime is so good here in Idaho because we're going to talk a little bit about the Gary LaFontaine theory of attraction. And his theory of attraction, especially on dry flies that are running the surface or near the surface of the water, is that there should be a color in that fly that matches something in the environment. Well, when you go north of Idaho, or go north, when you go towards the North Idaho from Boise, about 50 miles up the road, you go into the mountains, and you're in an evergreen forest. It is absolutely gorgeous, and it's all the way to the Canadian border, practically that way. One little spot there where it's not along the Lewiston, the prairie, it isn't. But for the biggest part, well, all that area, if you've got green in your fly, you're fishing. Thanks to David Buckner. David is kind of getting to be a regular.
He's our producer.
He is. We talked a couple of weeks ago about friends that proved to be the best friends of all, and we've got some really best friends, and he is one of our best friends, and we've never met him. And it's just funny about the digital world and how it's changed things. But anyway, David asked, would we do something about developing the wax and the dubbing? And so that's the story that we're going to talk about tonight. And for now, we're going to start with BT's wax dubbing, wax and the story with that. You can see this is the wax as we have it today. It's our 3 brands of dubbing and everything. And I can attribute all of that to Gretchen. But I'm going to have to turn the time back just a little bit. Well, Overton's Wonder Wax, back in the early 80s, right after I had moved to North Idaho from California, one of the clubs in Spokane, Washington, asked me to teach a hair wing clinic for them, a weekend hair wing clinic. Well, one of the guys that attended was this logger from Libby, Montana. His name was Glenn Overton. And at the time, he told me, he says, Al, I'm working on some of this wax for putting dubbing on. I said, oh, wow, that sounds great. Well, anyway, things went on, and About a year later, my phone rings in Sandpoint, and it's Glenn Overton over in Libby. And Libby was part of the territory that of the phone company that I worked for. And he says, "Would you come over to our club in Libby and teach a harrowing class?" I said, "Yep, sure will. You sure will." Well, anyway, bottom line is Glenn Overton and I became pretty good friends. And when he went out of business, I saw him at a show in Coeur d'Alene just as he was getting out of business, and he walks up to me and hands me this box, and it had a dozen tubes of Overton's Wonder Wax in it. And he says, "Thanks, you've been a good customer all the years and everything, and enjoyed your friendship." And then we went our ways. Well, this is some of the last that I got from him. Well, when Gretchen and I got married and we started tying commercially, one of these tubes of wax for each of us, we were tying a lot of dub flies. Oh, Jesus. I don't think one would last more than about 3 months. And it'd be gone, and then we'd have to get another one. I said, Gretchen, we're going to run out of this stuff. We got to come up with something to replace Overton's Wonder Wax. What do you think? Well, from this point, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Gretchen.
The additional impetus for developing the wax was Gary LaFontaine. He also used wax, Overton's wax, on his dubbing, and he became concerned about not being able to get the wax. So that's what we did. So this is the wax that we use. The way it started out was, okay, I figured this is going to be an easy task. So first thing I had to do was find a source for the raw materials. Now, Overton used natural materials. He used sap and beeswax. Well, the problem with the sap and beeswax is it's not consistent. And so he did have some strong variation in what he was producing, although it was all pretty good. We wanted something that we didn't have to go tripping through the forest to find. And so I got a hold of a company in Maine called Reed Wax and worked with a chemical engineer there. And what he sent me a chart that listed all of their waxes and carbon chain material, and it had its melt point, it had its, all the information about it. So I selected several of them, and he sent me samples. So I kept messing around with it, and I finally came up with, I think it was 2 or 3, I think it was 2 originally, that we used to mix together to make our wax. And so I had to determine the ratio. Now that once we did step forward a little bit, once we did determine that ratio, Reed Wax started mixing it for us. He said, "Why don't you just let me mix it for you, and I'll send it all." So we now have a proprietary formula with this company. So we just call them, order by the number, and they send it to us. And so we only have to have that. Additionally, stepping forward a little bit, the problem with wax, and it happens with candles and dubbing wax and whatever, is you'll get a film on the top. And so they now add something else to our formula to compensate for that. So the next task then was we needed the oil to go with it. And we ended up using a pharmaceutical grade oil at first, and now it's not, I don't know,
it's an industrial grade.
Industrial grade, not a pharmaceutical grade. You couldn't really afford to use the pharmaceutical grade, but we were getting it in smaller volumes. So we finally found a place where we could get this 50-gallon drum, and we put a pump in there and pump it out. It's very handy that way. This is our second 50-gallon drum, actually, that we've used. So we do go through quite a bit of that stuff.
Yeah.
So then we had to figure out how to melt it. So this is one of our melting pots. The crucial thing about melting is, what temperature do you want it? Do you want it super hot? Do you want it just barely melted? One of the things we found is that is a critical element in how well it extrudes. And that's all I'm going to say about that at this point. So we've kind of figured that out. So this is our equipment. This is high-tech material here. We have 2 different pots, one for the super tacky, one for the tacky. So we melted in those pots, and then I found out these camp coffee pots work pretty good to pour with. So we've got one there again for the tacky and super tacky. And I probably wouldn't have to do that, but I do. And I just use a ladle that I got at the restaurant supply place. And that's what I do. I dip out of the big pot and put it in there. And one of the things we do is we put all of the stuff into the pot, the wax, the oil, and everything, and we melt it. And then we let that cool and sit. So it's nicely combined. And then we turn around and we melt it again, and then we pour. These are the tubes that we use. Oh, I can just call somebody and get some tubes. It wasn't that easy. This was probably the most difficult part of the whole thing, was finding the tubes that would work. First of all, some of the tubes weren't strong enough to extrude it. So I finally found a place where I could get the tubes. Okay, I'll see, why don't you just send me 500 of them to start with? No, they say, we can't do that. You have to do the whole batch. You have to buy the whole batch. Well, what's a batch? Oh, a batch is 50,000. Okie dokie. Well, what's it going to cost me to have these all put together and ready to go? It was not doable. The price was not doable. So I said, well, what would you charge me if you don't put them together? Well, that greatly reduced it. So they sent me 2 pallets of 50,000 tubes, and it was 5 pieces that we put together. So if you multiply 50 times 5, that's 250,000 pieces to put together. As a consequence, we both have had surgery in our hands because it's not that easy to do. So we now, I got smart and said, isn't there some other way we can do this the next time I had to order? And it was quite a while. It took us a while to use all those 50,000. And they said, well, if other people order this tube, so if you put in an order that we can hold until somebody else wants some, then we can just throw yours onto the end and we can do smaller quantities. So that's the way we do it now. So when we get down to several thousand, then we call and say,
Get another 10, yeah.
yeah, we want another 10,000, and we wait until they send them, and then they charge us. Now, the other thing too is, why in the world do we have 2 formulas? Well, the way this worked is, this was in Bozeman, I'd be up in the kitchen making wax, and I would force them in a little tube and take it down to Al and say, what do you think? Not tacky enough, too tacky, whatever. So we went through that process until we finally came up with just what Al wanted. Oh, he said, this is perfect. So I poured some and sent a sample to Gary LaFontaine. Gary called back and said, has to be tackier. Al says, I don't want mine tackier. So I made a formula for Gary and we call it super tacky. I should have called it LaFontaine formula and sent it to him, and that's what he liked. Now, Al pretty much totally uses tacky. I don't think you ever use super tacky.
Only when I'm using some kind of a synthetic Seal-X or something like that.
Something like that. Same with me. When you're using Seal-X or something like that, the super tacky really, really is helpful. So that's why we have 2 formulas. Now, some people like the super tacky. Some people like the tacky. It is just an individual thing. Let's talk just a little bit about how we store it and why we store it that way. When we first started doing it, man, I got in there and I made a whole bunch of them. I had boxes of stuff. Well, what we found is that if it sits for a while, unprotected from the air, you are going to get a film on the top. So now we do small batches. We don't have a shelf. We don't carry more than about 25, 30, 40, 50 a head. And we store them in a Ziploc bag in an airtight box. So like when our French distributor calls or our English distributor calls, says we want, 400 of this and 500 of that, then we manufacture it at that point and send it to them so it's all fresh. So the shelf life, because we keep it, is very short. What do you do if you get that film? Because regardless of everything we've done, the special material we add to the formula, storing it airtight, you sometimes are going to get a film on it if you don't use it for a while. There's a couple of things you can do. Number one, if you're not going to be using it for 3 or 4 months, you might just put it in a Ziploc bag, might help. The other thing is you can put it in the microwave. Be very careful, just microwave it short little spurts, and you can melt that. Or you can just twist it up a little bit, run it over a piece of paper, and get rid of that. But you will eventually get a film on it. If you're not, well, you are going to get a film. We get films on ours. There's just no way. We've done everything we can to minimize that, but there it is. So why in the world would anybody make dubbing? Because you could just go to Hobby Lobby or Craft Warehouse, get some yarn, put it in a blender, and you've got dubbing. Well, sometimes it's not that simple. What happened was, well, first of all, we did do some manufacturing for Gary LaFontaine of his dubbing. And he used dazzle yarn, which is a nylon and an Antron mix, and called it, what did he call it? I keep forgetting.
Called it Magic Fingers, Quick Fingers Magic, Quick Fingers Dubbing.
Quick finger, whatever. So, but as things happened with Gary and his health deteriorated, and that was all going south, we decided that we would pick up the slack and start manufacturing it. So there again, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to buy some dazzle yarn. Well, the problem is that particular manufacturer no longer puts Antron in their yarn. So I went on eBay and I found a few skeins of it. And then a wonderful friend called and said, I've got some of this dazzle yarn and I'm not going to use it. You want it? And I'm like, oh yeah. So I figure he's going to bring over 5 or 6 skeins of yarn. He brought over 5 or 6 big boxes of skeins.
There must have been 50 skeins in there.
So we had lots of dazzle yarn. Sometimes the colors don't work, and sometimes we don't have the colors, and we'll talk about that later, how I deal with that. So that is our double magic. It's made with dazzle yarn that has Antron in it. Then the next one is the soft touch. We were getting a soft dubbing from Rocky Mountain Dubbing, and they quit making it. What we wanted was something to replace muskrat belly fur. Now, muskrat belly fur is 10 to 12.5 microns. Wonder what a micron is. Well, a micron is 3.937 times 10 to the minus 5 inches. So if you calculate that out, 10 to the minus 5 is 0.00001. And so you multiply that times the 3.9. So a micron is 0.0000, that's 4 zeros, 39. So it is very fine.
That's way to put it, is very fine.
So just to give you a couple more ways to look at it, cashmere is 14 microns. So cashmere is pretty fine, but not as fine as muskrat belly. A lot of the stuff out there just wouldn't work. And then I stumbled onto Australian merino sheep wool. It is amazing stuff. And it runs from 13.5 to 12 microns. And the company that I'm working with in Australia continue to work with their herd to get finer and finer and finer stuff. And it is just amazing. And their colors are great. That's an example of them there, but you really can't see how fine it is. But this merino sheep wool, it absorbs UV rays. It is anti-allergenic. It is the best stuff there is as far as
you get consistent colors, and the only way you could get other colors of muskrat belly fur is you don't dye gray to white. It's impossible. You can dye it to black, so you have to bleach it, and not every hide bleaches the same, so you getting consistent colors is virtually impossible. But we can now.
Wonderful colors.
Yeah, their colors are super.
Super. So this is what we use for our soft touch. Our third variety of dubbing is called Touchatron. Now, Touchatron is something we just kind of stumbled into. Al was using this Lion brand yarn, which is 98% acrylic and 2% poly, and it's real soft, really soft. And he was making a little bit of dubbing and playing with that. See, and he and his friend Jeff Smith started playing with it. They thought it was wonderful. But it has I think it's probably cotton piece of thread or twine that the other stuff is wrapped around. So if you just take it and cut it up, you've got that in there. So it didn't work. So those two of them said, forget it, we're not going to do that. I just couldn't leave it alone because it was too soft and too nice and the colors were so great. So I started playing with it. I got pretty good at pulling that fiber out of there and cutting it up. So I do that. And then I decided I needed to add some Antron to it. So I found some Antron, and we'll talk about that later, which I add to it. Initially, I was cutting this stuff up with scissors. And let me tell you, I got blisters on my hands. It was horrible. Well, we had this big cutter that we used to bind our books with the spiral bind, the ones we get from Amazon. And I thought, I wonder if that'd work. Eureka. It works beautifully. So now I can chop up quantities of that stuff, and it has to be pretty fine, like 1/4 to 1/2 inch in order to dub properly. And so that just made my life so much easier. It's so much faster. I can do huge quantities at a time. That's what we use to cut it up. Results in these small pieces. So in order to touch dub, you must have very fine yarn cut pretty short. The long stuff just not touch dub very good. It's designed for pulling it out, twist and pull, some other methods. I want you to notice all the different colors in here. Our colors of dubbing are not singular colors. They are blends of colors that we have spent some time mixing and blending till we get something that makes Al happy. Also, we have had some other tires like
Wayne Riley.
yeah, we've sent the stuff to them, and in fact, on the Touchatron, I had one color that Wayne said no on, and so I changed it until he liked it, and he was right. It wasn't that good. So most of our colors are a blend, and we work really hard for consistency. However, this is a small process. We don't weigh the colors. It's all done by the eye, comparing, working that way. Can be some little differences from package to package. We also package by hand, so there might be differences in the amount too. So what I do is I cut a large amount, and you see those big bags hanging there? They're full of cut up yarn, all blended, ready to put it to fuzz up and make dubbing out of them. So we later process it. Each one of those bags then has detailed information on it. That's the other kind of tricky thing, is keeping all of the formulas the same. And I keep them in several different places where the formulas are. I'm just so afraid I'm going to lose a formula. So I write them on the bags too, so I know when I'm cutting it up what to blend. And so I've got it all ready to put in and work. Now, the other material is the Antron. And this is just a sample of two of the colors of Antron that I get. I found a guy who's kind of like us. He does it on the side, and he dyes these colors. He does amazing work, so I can get some different colors. And then, of course, the white is the icicle, which is pretty clear. And if I don't have anything, the color I want, then I use that. And that works really good in all of them, actually. So I can't always get the colors because he does it on the side and he can't always get his raw material. So I kind of have to order ahead and kind of work it out. But I love his stuff. So that's what we use. Some of the Dazzle yarn, I can't get the colors that I want. So the manufacturer of Dazzle yarn makes yarn that's the same, except it doesn't have the Antron in. So I will cut Antron and you put it in there so that we can have the colors we want. So after I do all that, this is a high-tech piece of equipment that I want you to notice. We use this to fuzz up the yarn to make dubbing. I found, well, we had one that Al used, but it died. I'm right in the middle of when I was making a bunch of dubbing. So I went to Fred Meyer's actually, and I looked around and I found this blender. Now you don't want to use a blender because the picture that goes on it is too big. It just doesn't work. You need a smaller. So this one, the threads on it will actually take mason jars. So I use a pint mason jar screwed onto that thing, and I do one package at a time. It's the only way I can get a good mix and get a good blend. So this is high tech. It takes me a long time to make your dubbing. And I just, it's not a way to make a living. It's something you do because you want to do it. I don't weigh it. So sometimes the packages are going to vary a little bit. I do it all by, well, I have these little cups that I put the raw material in. And so it's all pretty much the same. And then I blend it. So this is dubbing ready for the customers. We have a couple of racks that we used when we were doing shows. And some of it's hanging on here so that we could easy access. I could grab it to send to customers. Questions? I hope I didn't bore you all to death.
No, I think it's amazing the amount of work you put in. I can't believe how much you guys do. I don't know where you find enough time to even be on this program.
Any questions on the dubbing?
What other quick question? Do you wholesale only, or is this could one of us order from you, dubbing?
Primarily retail. Now we just, interestingly enough,
It's that time of the program, folks, when you share with all of us. So let's get to that. Get to that part of the program. Okay, there you go. And there's the line through. All right.
I love that fly.
Ribs. She did a better job on the rib than you did.
I don't think so.
Oh.
Okay, and there's your red humpy.
Okay. Appreciate that, Evelyn. Thank you so much. A hackle folding tool that Lou told us about. You ready, Lou? Go ahead.
I just learned from an old-time tire to use a bread bag clip. Use the plastic and just turn it around and take a little razor blade and cut a notch in it. I don't have any with me. I thought Al was going to do it.
Oh, well, I've got some here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where's that tool I made for you, Gretchen? And I'm so intrigued by this. We're going to do more on it here later. And let me spotlight this. And this started its adventure in life as a bread or a package clip. Bread clip. This came off of a package of potatoes that I got at the store the other day. Well, you can fold hackle. And here's one that I made up into a tool for Gretchen for folding hackle with a handle on it. And it folds hackle pretty darn good.
well, show on the one that I did.
And somebody was going to say something or started to say something, and
I was just going to say, is there any way that you could demonstrate that on camera?
well, we're going to do it here in a week or so. We've gone so long tonight, we're not doing it tonight. But yeah, here's the folded hackle. And we'll do that probably next week. I'll see how everything comes together. Sam and Eric are going to be doing the presentation next week, and I got to see a little bit more about what their program is going to be as to whether we'll have time or whether it'll be one of the future weeks. But it'll be one of the future weeks. But there's a hackle she folded right there using this homemade tool from a bread.
That's really intriguing.
Yeah. Anyway, back to that. Anyways, Lou, thank you so much for that. And anyway, by the way, he learned about that from a very good friend of mine, which I assume was a good friend of his, but Ron Eagle Elk at the time lived in the Oregon area, I think, or somewhere over there on the West Coast. But anyway, I met him at some shows in Oregon, and we got to be really good friends. Ron Eagle Elk. I haven't heard from him in a long time, though. Don't know if he's still around or not, but
Oh, Al,
anyway,
he passed away. He moved to Maine, be with some family, and then he passed away a little while ago.
that's it for this week, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week now. Thanks a lot.